Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Now, the Oval Office clash between Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy, with Vice President Vance at Trump's side, revealed a deep divide over Ukraine's war effort and the future of U.S. support. With American public opinion shifting and Trump openly questioning Zelenskyy's approach, is Ukraine's strategy still viable? What are the hard choices ahead? Now, joining us today on TVP World to address these pressing concerns is Rudik, a Ukrainian MP and leader of the Voice Party. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, Ben, and thank you so much for having me.
Now, many see the Oval Office confrontation as a disaster for Ukrainian diplomacy. Was it a strategic mistake for Zelenskyy to publicly pressure Donald Trump, knowing, Trump being Trump?
Well, you know, Ben, I think we all have wanted that the situation went differently and this meeting ended differently. However, I think the issue started 2 weeks ago when President Trump said that Ukraine has started the war and then called President Zelenskyy dictator. Then he pulled back on the dictator thing, and then everything else elapsed. So I think there are, of course, emotional issues there, but there is also a practical, factual issue. President Zelenskyy came to the White House to sign the framework of the rare minerals deal and to get the security guarantees instead. So what we have heard from President Trump, and this is unfortunate, that the security guarantees are that he knows Putin and Putin believes him and he believes Putin. And I'm sorry, but for Ukraine, this is not enough. These are not the security guarantees that we can accept. So we need to pull back and start over because we have been there. And what President Zelenskyy was trying to explain to President Trump and J.D. Vance, look at the facts, at our previous mistakes, at things that didn't work before, so you wouldn't have to repeat them. Look, Ben, in 2014, we've been in this ceasefire deal with Russia, and there has not been a single day that Russia wouldn't break this deal. So how right now is different? How we will make sure that this will work? The most important question, what would happen if Russia will break the deal right now? And for that, nobody has answered this question, and plus President Trump and J.D. Vance, they have shown intentions to repeat the mistakes that were in the past, right? Like saying, oh, we will try to talk to them. Yeah, well, we have tried that many times. And there is another thing that I think is not getting enough of the highlights. We have seen European leaders rapidly and intensely changing their opinions about Ukraine's war after they have visited Kyiv or the front line. Because it's very different when you are talking about war somewhere and when you come in, look in the eyes of people who have lost everything, who have been under the attack, who are fighting at the front line, whose families were killed, to sit 2 hours in the bomb shelter when Russian drones are coming in. That changes things. And this is why President Zelenskyy was inviting over and over President Trump and J.D. Vance to Ukraine, not to talk about the war as a whole, but to see it and witness it by themselves.
Right, perhaps knowing it on a macro scale, but also on a micro scale and how people are feeling in that type of particular situation, right?
You know, Ben, I haven't seen a politician who would be able, honestly, to resist when people are holding your hands and saying, save us, you have the power to save us. And this is like what we are doing. And so I think this trip is still somewhere in the future, and it needs to happen for President Trump and J.D. Vance to be able to make the acknowledged, educated decisions.
Right, and speaking of President Trump and Vance, they also argued that NATO expansion provoked Russia and that the war could have been avoided. How do you respond to these who see this as a broader geopolitical conflict rather than a clear-cut case of Russian aggression?
Oh, of course, it's a broader geopolitical issue. So we see that there is a decline of the status of the United States in the world as the world policeman. This decline didn't happen yesterday, right? It happened over time. And let's see, the NATO's goal usually at the beginning was what? To contradict to Russia, to defend the countries against the Soviet Union. So we in Ukraine are, first of all, helping, actually executing on that. And second, we are doing that after there was a Budapest memorandum when Ukraine has given up on our second largest nuclear arsenal for the promises of protection from the UK, United States, and Russia. These promises were not kept. This is why saying, oh, NATO provoked that is just, a little bit over-exaggeration. Yes, there is a geopolitics there, but it's not about the provocation. It's about countries like Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China working together. About authoritarian regimes ending up, coming together, ganging up, I would say, and threatening the leadership of the United States. And I think Donald Trump, who has positioned himself as a strong leader and who said that he is getting peace through strength, needs to go ahead and try to get peace through strength.
Right, show that strength, right?
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, the support for Ukraine in the U.S. have dropped significantly. At the start of the war, a CNN poll shows about 74% of Americans supporting the war in Ukraine, to now that number has gone to under 50%. Why do you think American public opinion is shifting? And what can Ukraine do to rebuild that support?
So it's not surprising that the support declined, because first, people cannot feel emotionally supportive every single day, and we understand that there is exhaustion a little bit. However, we are working with our diaspora, we are working with different US politicians, and I can tell you, Ben, that over the last 2 days, there was a storm, a shower of the support from particular American people who were apologizing on behalf of their president and who were standing up and increasing the support. So I think if we do the polls in 2 weeks, we will see that these numbers change a little bit. And on all the social media, honestly, I don't remember even that we had such a level of support probably since the beginning of full-scale invasion. So in effect, Donald Trump's statements were actually mobilizing for the US public.
Right, maybe that actually invigorated some of the support back. Now, many Americans actually now question the Endgame, because, of course, Ukraine's goal of reclaiming all lost land, including Crimea, a lot of people see that as unrealistic given the current military situation and shifting Western priorities. What's your take on that?
So the truth is, as of right now, as of today when we are talking, there is no plan. We haven't seen a plan from anyone that we would say, oh, this plan would work. So yes, we have all to work together to figure out how, what are the realistic ways of ending the war. And main question, that the baseline of all discussions and negotiations and territories is, what are the security guarantees? How do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again? And what would happen if they do? Right now, Ben, we have heard many questions. What Ukraine is ready to cede? What is the compromise? But we haven't heard the answer to, okay, but what is the baseline? How does this new idea, new plan, whatever it is, work if we have seen that previous steps didn't work? And I think after we see the security guarantees, it will be easier to discuss what is possible.
Right, now the Trump camp is viewing Putin actually as a rational actor in this whole conversation, who will negotiate in good faith because of this previous topic we're talking about. Because, well, with the lack of security guarantees, Ukraine it's really hard for Ukraine to say what they are willing to cede. Do you see that as a kind of counterproductive when it comes to having these type of negotiations and increasingly swaying Trump to actually believe that Putin's the rational side of this discussion?
Well, President Trump does have this belief, but it is illusional, and I can very easily prove it to you with the facts. Since President Trump have said that he thinks that Putin wants peace, or he believes, or he's sure, we have seen absolutely zero facts on the ground to support this.
Right.
So the attacks on Kyiv and other peaceful cities have not changed a bit. They indeed intensified.
Right?
Yes, we had the most massive attack of drones, 270 at night, over the last week, right? One of the nights of the last week. The situation at the battlefield didn't change, so we didn't see Russia pulling somewhere, and it happened during the discussions in negotiations in Saudi Arabia. And I think another sign that Putin doesn't want peace, again, not in emotional statements, but in the facts, was during the Munich Security Conference, Ben. Russia attacked Chernobyl sarcophagus. And it is called sarcophagus for a reason, because nobody in their sane mind would attack Chernobyl sarcophagus that brought disaster to Europe. Russia will do. So we respect President Trump's intention to find a way. But we think we need to be talking not with emotions, but we need to be talking about the facts. Right. And I think the meeting in Saudi Arabia was a lost diplomatic opportunity, because we in Ukraine would appreciate if sitting down with a terrorist, American delegation would at least say, well, we will sit down with you. Maybe you should return 20 Ukrainian children as a sign of a goodwill, or some prisoners of war. You know, just do that. I think that would be done, and we will have some lives saved, right? And this didn't happen. So I think there will be a huge loss and will be a huge disaster if President Trump will continue operating, not with the facts, but with his beliefs.
Right, and speaking of, well, putting emotions aside and relying on a fact, a very strong criticism is Zelenskyy is that he has relied very heavily on public appeals and moral arguments. Do you think this approach has run its course, and does Ukraine need a new diplomatic strategy to secure the support it needs?
Yeah, well, of course, diplomacy is never off the table. Diplomacy is the baseline, right? But over the last couple of days, we have seen Ukrainians and people all over the world going out on the streets with the support. So you should never, ever remove this from your strategy, right? Mm-hmm. And right now we have seen that finally European leaders, after the Munich Security Conference and J.D. Vance cold shower saying, US umbrella is not already over your heads, and after this exchange in the Oval Office, I think European leaders finally start realizing that we all together need to think about security of European continent as a whole, as together, and perhaps keeping in mind that US may be pulling its support or at least decreasing that. It's not a pleasant thing, but it was coming and right now it's the reality. You have to face it, and you have to work together figuring out. We in Ukraine are in, right? We say, okay, let's go together. Let's figure out how the new security for Europe will look like. We will be putting in whatever we can, and what's on the table from your side. So we know that the negotiations are ongoing, that there are talks, and we just hope that at some point European leaders will come up with the plan that will be a very practical one and will require, of course, the increase of spending on defense from European countries, but it will be something that we will all feel comfortable with.
Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Kira.
Thank you, Ben, and glory to Ukraine.
Cheers. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.